Hi, my name is Keith Tenzer. I'm a solution architect here at Temporal, and today I want to walk you through a payments demonstration using Temporal and what we refer to as durable execution. A payments use case is pretty simple on the surface. There's a bank, you withdraw money from it, and you deposit that money into a different bank. However, a lot can happen along the way. Withdraw can fail, deposit can fail. You could end up calling withdraw and deposit more than once. Infrastructure of the bank could fail. Any downstreams can fail. Essentially, everything can fail and will fail. And so the value of Temporal is you can offload all that failure handling to Temporal and allow Temporal to ensure that your business process, in this case payment, completes to completion every time, all the time, without exception, and in the face of any failures. And allows you to just focus on your business logic, which is calling essentially two APIs, withdraw and deposit. Sounds great. Let's see this in practice. So I've got a couple different scenarios here, starting with the obligatory happy path. And if you're new to Temporal, Temporal models your application or business process as a workflow. And so inside of a workflow, you have workflow code, which is essentially your business logic. Anytime you call something or need to run something that can fail, you want to do that in an activity. Activities have retry policies around them. So that's one of the reasons. And so it's pretty simple. You have workflows and activities. In this case, we have a money transfer workflow. So when we start a transfer of funds, we are starting a workflow. We do validation. That's an API call, could fail, hence activity. Same thing with withdraw, API call, could fail, activity. Deposit, same thing. Even a database update could fail, right? So you want to do that in an activity. You get the picture. And then when we complete our transfer, what are we doing? We're closing the workflow. So let's see how this works in practice here with our demo. On the left here, I'm going to start a local worker on my laptop. In Temporal, you create workers using the Temporal SDK in the programming language of your choice. In this case, we have a Java worker, and you register your workflows and activities against that worker. Again, those are also created using the SDK. And a worker sits there and it pulls for work. So all execution happens in a worker. It's going to basically pull for work, and it's going to pull the temporal service, and in this case on the right, which is running in Temporal Cloud. And when we start a workflow, we're basically calling to the temporal service to start a workflow. It then starts delegating tasks, activity and workflow tasks to the workers, and the workers then execute that and return back their progress to the service, and on it goes. So your responsibility is to operate the workers, and that's where code execution happens, and Temporal Cloud takes care of all of the durability and everything else associated with the orchestration of the workflows. For this demonstration, we have a little web UI, which I'm going to start now and go into, and we're going to start our first workflow. So I'm going to select kind of account where we're sending this money to, $1, and I'm going to start my happy path. So I'm going to hit the transfer button here, and it's going to kick off a workflow, which is going to show up on Temporal over here, and we can click into this workflow and we can see the event history. So Temporal is an event source system, and all events are stored in the event history. And here we can see a timeline view of that event history and all of the kind of tasks we've executed. So here we did a validation activity task. We've done withdraw. There's some timers in here which are in yellow. Activities are green, and you can see here the how long this completed and how long each of these different primitives took to complete. You can also dive in really deep into the view for the entire workflow history, where you can see all of the tasks and that were completed and any errors maybe that were encountered along the way. And finally, you can also get a compact view, so you can just see kind of from the perspective of the primitives you've called in your workflow, and you can obviously click into those and look into the individual tasks that are behind those things. So that was the happy path. Now I want to get into some more interesting usages, use cases, and scenarios. So the first one being advanced visibility. So what we saw was essentially the standard visibility. With advanced visibility, we can actually upsert key value pairs in our code in order to expose those externally. So what we're going to do here is, let's say we wanted to know each of these steps and query workflows and find out what step our workflows are on. Steps being activities in this case. But we're going to run our workflow, and when we complete these various different steps or running them, we're going to upsert a key value pair called step equals, and we're going to set it to validation, withdraw, deposit, etc. And then we can do a query and search for workflows that meet that step. So let me start again another workflow. This time we're going to select the scenario advanced visibility. I'm going to select transfer, and off the workflow goes. So we can see here it's running, and you can see the step is being populated right now with withdraw. And as the workflow goes, it's going to update. You can see here it updated. Again, it completed, updated to send notification. And so that's how you can kind of expose these search attributes. And the beauty here, you can search not only the standard attributes, but also any custom search attributes. And you can simply just type in here, in this case, step equals send notification. And it's going to show all the workflows that completed with send notification. So that's kind of advanced visibility. Now I want to go into another scenario, which is workflow interaction. So that one of the great things Temporal can do is you can interact with workflows. And you do that via signals or updates externally to your workflows. So in this use case, we could consider if funds were higher than a certain amount, we want manual approval. So we want someone to actually approve that workflow for that amount of money. So in this case, we create a transfer, start our workflow, and when we get to validation, we're going to prompt the user to, or prompt somebody externally to approve that. So we're going to wait. In this workflow, we've decided to wait 30 seconds, and if that time hits, we will fail the workflow. Otherwise, if we get a approval within that time, we will continue and we will follow the normal steps of withdrawing and depositing and completing our transfer. So now I'm going to run this workflow or the scenario for human in the loop, and I'm going to start the transfer. And what we're going to see here is it's going to kick it off and it's going to start this timer that I mentioned. So again, if that reaches 0, it's going to fail the workflow. Again, this isn't a requirement. This is a decision you can make. You can wait for the signal forever, or you can do whatever you want, essentially. So if I refresh here and jump into the workflow, you'll also see it's sitting here waiting basically on this timer. Now I don't want this thing to expire, so I'm just going to approve it, and it's going to then receive here, you see receive the signal, approve transfer in purple, and then on it goes. It's going to complete the rest of the transaction, withdrawing funds from one account and depositing them into the other account. So that's the way interaction works. Next, I want to start looking at some failure scenarios, starting with API failures. Obviously, API failures is a common thing due to many different reasons, including being throttled. And so in this case, we're going to run the same workflow, but when we get to withdraw, we're simulating a failure. And it's going to fail 5 times before automatically recovering using the retry policy. Again, retry policies are part of activities. You can just set them and it will handle automatically doing retries for you. And then once that recovers, it's going to do deposit and then complete the transfer. So I'm going to go back to my UI, grab an account here, and select the scenario API downtime. And then I'm going to start my workflow. And then we can see here's our API downtime workflow. And you can see here it's already on the 3rd attempt, and we can see it's failing. And we can see we have pending activities. And so whenever we have a failing activity, it's going to show as pending, right? Because we're waiting on that for successful. You can see here it's retrying, and you can also see the stack trace. And you can see, poof, it recovered. We no longer have a pending activity. We can go back to our workflow history, and you can see it's recovered and completed. You can see also in the timeline view, it's in light green here, there was obviously a problem, right? And we can also see by the length of time, this withdrawal took a lot longer than deposit. So we could click on this, and we can actually see here real quick, oh, it took 5 attempts. And we can also, if we're interested, look at the last failure, potentially optimize it if it's something that can be optimized. So that's the way retries work. Again, they're built into Temporal and built into activities. So the next scenario I want to show is a recoverable failure. In this scenario, we're going to simulate that by introducing a bug in our code. And so what we're going to end up with is we're going to start our workflow, uh, our transfer workflow, do validation, and do the withdraw. And after the withdraw, we're going to have a bug. And the workflow is going to basically be stuck until we fix the bug. And then it's going to continue where it left off, continue the deposit, and complete the transfer. So let's start that. And I'm going to select here a bug in workflow and hit transfer and go back to the main workflows screen. And we're going to go in. You can see it started, and you can see it's already hit this bug. So we've got this workflow's running, no problem, right? The workflow's running, and it can actually stay in this running state forever until we fix it. That's not a problem. And you can see here, we've got our stack trace or your failure, which is simulation, obviously fix me. And you can see here in the event history, it's basically sitting here waiting. We can also go look at the overall history and dive in, and we can see we have a workflow task failure. And so in temporal workflow tasks, we will retry forever, and they're retried every 10 seconds. And so now what we have to do is go into the code and fix the problem. So the problem is here we're throwing basically an exception. If it's the scenario bug, we throw this exception, right? So we have to fix this. So the first thing is to comment that out, which is obviously our fix. And we're not quite done yet. We have to then restart our worker, right? And so think about it. In this case, this workflow is running in this worker, right? So all the state, once I Control C and restart this worker, the state is gone. So not only do we have to recover from this situation, we have to replay this event history. And that's why Temporal is an event source system. So Temporal is going to have to replay this workflow history. And when we hit an activity, we don't actually rerun any code. We already ran these activities, so we know what happened. We don't re-execute them. We just move on, reconstructing our workflow code and our state until we get to where we left off, and then we continue with normal execution. So you're going to see once I'm going to Control C this now. You're going to see once I start this worker back up, it's just going to pick up magically where it left off, as if nothing happened. So we're not going to see withdraw again or validate. We're just going to see deposit happen. Right? So I'm going to start this worker, and now it's going to go with the fix, and it's going to start, pull on this, and then it's going to, as soon as it reruns the workflow task, you can see it already corrected itself, it reran it. You can see it picked up right here with deposit activity, because that's where it left off, right? And it completed everything. And you can see in our event history here, the timeline view, there's a big gap here that we can see between these actions. Obviously, that because we had this workflow task kind of failing. And you can see in the history, if we go back, the workflow task and what was happening here. And so, yeah, Temporal recreated the state back to this point and then continued on. And that's the magic of durable execution. It continues as if nothing happened in the face of any kind of failures. And so this is actually when we talk about durable execution, this is actually what it is. Great, so that was recoverable failure. For the last scenario, I want to look at unrecoverable failure. So in this situation, we're failing the workflow implicitly because of some business logic. In this case, invalid account. So we have a transfer, we do our validation, we withdraw funds, and then we get to deposit. And we can't deposit money because we have an invalid account. So we're stuck. So again, this is decision you make as a workflow developer, what you want to do in this scenario. But in this case, we've decided we are going to fail that. We're going to then roll back, undo the withdraw, and fail the transfer. So basically set everything back to the way it was and then mark the workflow as failed. So let me bring back the UI here, and we can start a new workflow with this scenario. So invalid account, I'm going to hit transfer and then go back to my workflows. And once that starts, we can jump in. And we're going to see here, yeah, it already failed, but like we can retrace kind of what happened here by looking at the event history. So we can see that we ran our validation, we ran our withdraw, and then the deposit failed. We can click into this and we can see here, that it failed based off of, based off of what attempts, and it also will give a failure message here. And we can see then that we undid this withdraw with this other activity here, which completed successfully, but then nevertheless we decided to fail the workflow. Again, that's up to you how you want to do it. So I'm going to now kind of conclude this. I appreciate you your attention and hope this was valuable. And I want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. If you have any other questions about Temporal, please do reach out to us here at Temporal. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.